crust.
Yeah, it also looks like mud.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
One time I said,
So we take the
we
real
made
ones,
halva,
and
and he thought that, we are making
really,
sesame.
Just
this
this
is how
smell.
we
Not
have.
sesame.
You should do a cooking demonstration. We make halva. He makes halva.
We make
But not the sesame.
Wouldn't we all would come to watch?
You going to?
It's
He's not
some kind of
excited.
other food that is dressed up to be halal.
we didn't see anybody else, we were,
Because we had,
okay.
we had a fire.
Yeah.
And the fire alarm was, the whole office. So he says, make sure this one works. So I press, it's working. But it didn't ring over there. It didn't ring to the other one. He said, you need to press here. Yeah. But he looked at the guy, he said,
What's happening in
it's a because our electrician is licensed. He said the first time they asked him that. He said, you can fight it, it will take 2 months. Oh, you can do it. So we did it.
And you have to pay.
And we, well, yeah, Joe's.
See, if there's an existing system,
your county one,
Yeah, they were.
typically it was permitted originally, and you don't have to upgrade it unless you do a construction.
Oh, you keep it, yeah.
You're allowed to. They might say you need to change of occupancy, you know, it's considered an upgrade, so now you've got to make it current.
You know the answer to that
But
question.
Joe Bailey, the
What?
electrician, said he in Secaucus, he did fight that provision and he won.
I mean, that's what they say,
Every 2 months you can.
Yeah, exactly.
it's not supposed to be more than, it's not early.
Crazy.
They do what they want, these guys. I mean, those
So,
Oftentimes,
at best, if any accuracy were involved,
investigation for them.
you work with them.
then it's been a long time since we've had that concern.
That's why
So,
we're the owner of the company.
it best would be a
He found out.
remembrance of doing something, because we, at one time, had a problem with that. But
Really was 9 days.
anyway,
stroke is over there, and is it gonna be sufficient, is it gonna be dark over there? You know, because people are using most cases, will say, this is what they do. Once you finish that kitchen, put in those storage racks, this, when the guy inspector comes through, he's not going to throw it. You need to put up another light here, you need to put something over here. Okay, we go. So when the inspector comes in, but it gives people,
Eating area, very nice eating area.
What's closer?
right.
Except you can go in there. No seats. That was another thing. So again, the owner of the building went to buy a sink back in the park. We passed with it. He was working.
Typically when my clients do, when they tell me they're done, I will,
You would walk.
I say, okay, I've done this, seen this, approved this, done. And they'll say, well, that was approved. And it's like, that's fine. You want to wait until the inspector comes in?
Do it temporarily, and you'll put the town on when you get there.
You're paying me for my expertise. I'm not making money by putting it, if you need 3 more lights, you can always think.
Some because there's so much seats on.
Yeah. That's why I think that's what I do. It's your owner's perspective.
You know,
You'd be like the contractor.
So what I try to do is
they never put it back. You know, the name and they're again, the 14 and then.
It would cost you if I was not engaged on this project. Hey, maybe people pay me. So are we just gonna go to Mara because Mincha really can't read Torah, can't say Kedusha,
No,
so does it make sense to do Mincha?
as an individual,
Yes.
right, we kind of actually lost that time now. Well, I mean, that's a worthy endeavor. If you had led with that, David, I would have been all on board.
Well, you were in the midst of a conversation, Ellie and I were talking, and then I looked over and you were still talking, so I didn't raise the subject.
But if you'd led with, to annoy David, we
Ah.
really should get this in
Oh, okay,
there.
oh, led with that. Okay.
John was trying to order us, so we had to go out. No, he's such a good guy.
What's his name?
Joe.
Joe. That's what I thought.
And he's interested in knowing what we do, why we do it, and what it's all about.
He tries to do this.
And he's explaining to me what they do tonight, which I didn't realize they was there. The whole thing with the sacraments the night before Easter Sunday,
they
not
try
to
to
be able to
come
go and
back.
work there, they have to go for training.
Right.
That's, there's a time period.
Although before you do picture taking, you know, you have your
churches,
They did not really see.
synagogues are all individually self-sustaining. The churches, they are to the local diocese. In this area, the diocese is the center, I think, is the source of funds. Money to actually runs. But they still rely on, the donation
What's the name on it?
He was able to turn around and do it.
Oh, he did.
Yes, so it's, yes and no. We were able to make some improvements. It's just, I'm just the chair of the community development agency.
Most Pascal is.
But that's the way it is, and that's what they look
Right, when you're on,
I have no problem playing
when
games.
you're on country road.
It's just-
Oh, country
When
road.
you get to the industrial area
Yes.
there, if you make a left, right along the railroad, it's on both
Yes.
sides.
That
State
building.
Street, it was all this. It was all,
Those damn little signs are the belts. They got that already? Belts.
Dogs was doing that. Dogs is there, yeah. But they're tricks.
I don't know what's nuts and belts.
Those, there's a retail, I guess. Also, it's hang around. That's what they start.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the gym stores.
Oh.
We're not allowed to have laundromat. Laundromats were
Yeah, but they got dogs still.
cell phone stores required.
Okay, so I learned the difference between an ordinal number and a cardinal number. What?
Cardinal is red.
Oh, Oriole number, no, not an Oriole number, an ordinal number. That'd be funny. Yeah, like a cardinal number is just a number or a number of things. It could be a number, right? But a ordinal number is a positional. It's an order, right? It positions it. And so the Omer, counting the Omer, is an ordinal counting. We're counting positionally the days from Pesach to Shavuot, right? And so each day I'm trying to have a little game of taking the number of the day. Today was the 6th day, and asking what is the most essential, the most important 6th thing in Judaism. Like something that is known as it's the 6th thing and it's whatever it is, and without it, Judaism would not be the same. So,
Friday to prepare for Shabbos.
so for example, the second I said was King David, because, right, Shaul was the first king, didn't work so well, but King David, our tradition wouldn't be the same without Hamelech David, right? So the second king, most essential. And then last night it was 5, and I went with the book of Deuteronomy, of Devarim, which gives us the Shema and things that we don't have anywhere else in Torah or in Judaism, but, and this is just according to the limits of my creative mind. So it's not like it's an official list. But tonight, it's the 6th.
6 days of creation.
So what 6th thing, in other words, what thing that is 6th in its position somehow is so essential to Judaism that that Judaism wouldn't be the same without it.
6 days of creation.
6 days of creation is good, right? But that's not Jewish, that's the world, right? We gotta, so Shisha, Sidre, Mishnah, but you have to get to the right number, because, I'm sorry, not the right. Yes, there are 6 orders of the Mishnah, but we're looking for the 6th thing, right? So, if you want to talk about the Mishnah, then you have to say which of the orders is the 6th order. I'll even give you credit if we can name all 6 of them as a group effort. Shisha, Sidre, Mishnah. Without phones, come on, you know. Right, the 6 orders of the Mishnah? Oh, let me give a quick lesson. Okay, so we have the Torah, right? This is the simple lesson, this simple version. And during the end of the temple, the Second Temple period, even before the destruction, we had the rise of alternate traditions, right? So it wasn't just Judaism in the temple. There were other competing ideas for what Judaism should be. Right, so the Essenes, right, at the Dead Sea Scrolls, that's a competing vision. They went away, but it was an alternate. So they're the kind of early rabbis, proto-rabbis, who don't even have the title Rav or rabbi, like Hillel and Shammai and others, right? And they're around in that time, and they have teachings and guidance about how do you live, what do you do, what are we supposed to do as Jewish people, right? Then, with the destruction of the temple, big question, well, okay, it's one thing to have competing things, like where you can go to the temple for this and you can go someplace else for that. But now we don't have the temple. So what does it mean to live Jewishly? What do we have to do? Right? And that's what the Mishnah comes to answer. And there are competing visions of it, or versions of it, until around the year 250, when Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi codifies what we have as the Mishnah and creates a literature that has 6 orders, and then within each order you have different masechtot, different chapters or different volumes. And then from that order, you also have the Talmud. Because the Talmud is essentially it's both commentary, wisdom literature, and also like establishing reasoning behind why we do things. So in the Mishnah, it just says, do this, do that. It doesn't say what the limits are necessarily, and it definitely doesn't say, how do you know that we're supposed to do that? So a lot of what the Talmud is obsessed with is, where is this teaching coming from? Is it in the Torah, or is it from someplace? Is it from the rabbis? Right. So that's the Talmud, but that's built on the 6 orders of the Mishnah, and all of that. I should say, without all of that, we wouldn't have the Judaism we know today. Right? We're rabbinic Jews. Our tradition is completely shaped by these texts. And so you've got the 6 orders. We have Zeraim, which means seeds. It's everything agricultural. We have Kiddushim, which are the sacred offerings, like the temple sacrifices. We have Nashim, women. Ladies get their own order. Well, the ladies get an order that the men wrote about them, so it's not exactly egalitarian. We have Nizikin, which are damages. That's all the torts stuff, like who's responsible for damaging, who's responsible for damages if this happens, if that happens, that kind of thing. I said Zeraim, Kedoshim, Nashim, Nizikin, Moed, which are season, holidays basically, and Shabbat. And the final, which is Taharot, which is purity. So it's all about ritual purity. So I was going in an ordinal fashion, I was going to say Taharot, the 6th order of the Mishnah, which completes it, and without which we wouldn't have the Judaism that we know and love today. Did I thoroughly confuse you? Oh, where's that?
Is kosher mean purity?
Kashrut?
Yeah.
No. You mean like in which part of kashrut? Hmm?
It means what you can eat. I think purity is about ritual purity.
Yeah, so purity is about ritual purity.
Kashrut is about.
Although there's tameh, I mean, so in kashrut, we have a few things, right, that are that are not all in one bundle. Don't mix milk and meat. And we have lists of animals that we can eat and we can't eat.
If you eat something that's not kosher, are you impure?
Well,
That's the question.
with regards, so one thing that we want to, I want to kind of add as a detail of information that helps, I think, is that when we talk about purity and impurity, it has to do with being able to go into the temple or being able to partake of the sacrifices offered in the temple. Right? Were you pure or impure? And if you're impure, you can't. So, yes, if you touch certain animals that were impure, you would become impure. But your impurity is about whether you can go, going into the temple or not. So it doesn't really have an impact after the destruction of the temple. Right? Does that make? Does that make sense, or?
Doesn't answer his question specifically, but it makes sense as to what the section on purity limits you, or how it impacts you.
Yeah, so the impurity only has to do with the temple, so it doesn't really have effect in our world or our lives.
Could you go into the temple? Is really your question.
But there's no temple.
Right, but let's go back to when there was. Were you ritually impure if you had ingested an unkosher animal? Because just touching an unkosher animal didn't make you impure, right?
Depends which one.
Right, not every animal.
Yeah.
But let's say you.
No, you had sinned.
Right. So that, I think, would answer your question. You would have sinned, but it wouldn't have made you impure.
Right. So some animals would, some wouldn't,
Right.
but any sherets, any creepy crawly thing makes you impure. Yeah, so there's a lot of.
So what did they do with insects that might have come into the
Did you say incense or incest?
insects?
Insects.
Well, you said creepy crawly thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So how did you rid your dwelling of creepy crawly things and not be impure?
I can't imagine you could do agriculture without.
Right, or how could you tend your fields?
Well, you could become impure. It was a question of if you were going to go into the temple, right? So how would you do that?
You would have to go through the purity rituals.
Yeah. Which was mostly, I mean, depends, if there was sin involved, it's different, but if it were,
Mostly bathing.
if you didn't have to if you didn't have to like have a waiting period, which sometimes you did depending on what it was, where you would, like you'd have to make a small offering, it could be like a handful of grain or something, and then you'd wait till nightfall. So you'd wait till the end of the day, immerse in the mikveh, and then you can be pure. So when you go to Jerusalem next time, and you go to the archaeological park that's around the walls of the of the Temple Mount, you know, the Western Wall and everything. When you go to the southern part, which is really beautiful if you've never been, it's gorgeous because you're on the top of the mountain. Basically, you're standing on near the top of the mountain, and you can look down over the valley, and it's really beautiful. And you see carved into the mountain, there are mikvaot. You know, so there are these ritual pools for people to immerse in on their way up to be able to go into the temple.
So what happened to the rules of purity after the temple was destroyed? Do they no longer function?
Essentially, they don't. The one place that is looks like it's impurity, but is not exactly impurity, is nida, women who are menstruating, right, during that period of time. When men, they're not supposed to be in contact with their husbands, or husbands not supposed to be in contact with them physically, and they are immersed in the mikveh afterwards, so in order to transition from nida to being able to be intimate again.
What about contact with something deceased?
No, that's tough. Yeah, then that's what we need the red heifer for.
I haven't seen one in a while.
No. But so nida seems like it's kind of like a impurity thing, but it's not the same exactly. I don't know if that helps, but the rabbis were writing the Mishnah, and we can daven Mariv. We can start to daven Mariv in a second. But the rabbis were writing all these things down, and you know, some of them 100 years or more after the destruction of the temple, as a way of codifying it, maintaining it, either for the time when the temple is rebuilt, or really as an exercise in the purity of Torah study, only for its own sake, right? Where we say Torah lishma, Torah for its own sake, where we're studying Torah, not for any purpose of writing a sermon or teaching a class or something, which is all fine and good as well. But when we're studying Torah just for its own sake, a purity to it. So if you're studying the rules of Tahara, where you can't, they don't have any application in the world, then it's kind of this purity of Torah study.
What were the rules have applied in the alternative places that were used for sacrifice and prayer?
Well, we didn't use alternative places for sacrifice after the destruction of the Second Temple.
What do we do now? But
Hmm?
to eliminate the sacrifices,
Yeah.
there was still temples and places people congregated to worship.
Yeah, but it's not the temple in Jerusalem, so we don't worry about it.
So you go in there impure.
Also because if you can't, for certain types of impurity, if you can't make the offering, you can't become purified. And since we don't have a temple to make the offering in, it kind of puts a little hiccup in the process. It obviates kind of makes it impossible or useless, basically, in terms of our day-to-day. So, taharot. It's useless, but essential.
We need the holiday. Siddur. Yeah. Okay. Just Mar. But it's holiday Mar. Page 28.
28.
See you later. ומהביום המביא לילה מבדיל ביום ולילה אדוני צבאות שמו אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב ערבים. You can be seated. Yeah, sit down. ואהבתך תשים ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. Adonai Elohechem Emet. מלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ובני ישראל הכנו שירה בשמחה רבה ואמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נהדר בקודש נוראתי לא רוסף אלה מלכותך ראו בניך בוקע ים לפני משה זה לינו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב גרם יר חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גל ישראל השכיבנו על מוצאתנו בואנו לחיים ושלום מעתה ועולם ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך ברוך אתה אדוני הפורס סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים. וידבר משה את מועדי אדוני אל בני ישראל, יגדל ויקדש שמי רבה. Oh, that's right, we can't do it.
So we get down to that quietly on our own, page 41 for the Amidah for the Mincha. But also remember the paragraph at the bottom of the page, and then Shabbat. As we're completing our Amidah, we turn to 50 for the Kiddush for the 8th day of Pesach, which includes Havdalah as part of it. Savri.
Chaim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar bar mikol ha'am, v'armamanu kol hashom, v'kishar b'mitzvotav. ותיתן לנו, אדוני אלוהינו באהבה, מודים לשמחה, חגים וזמנים לששון, את יום חג המצות הזה, זמן חירותנו, מקרא קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. הבנו בחרת, ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, מועד Amodei Kochecha, Besimcha V'sason, Hinchatanu, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mekadesh Yisrael, V'hazmanim. Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Borei meorei ha'esh. We use the light from the light bulbs there. Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Amad ben kodesh lachol, ben or lechoshech, ben Yisrael le'amim, ben yom hashvi'i l'sheshem ha'maseh, ben kiddushat Shabbat l'kiddushat Yom Tov, hivdalta, et yom hashvi'i misheshem ha'maseh kiddashta, hivdalta v'kiddashta, et amcha Yisrael b'kedushatecha, Baruch Atah Adonai, Amad ben kodesh lekodesh.
That's it.
And that's it, yeah.
Count the Omer.
Yeah, we should count the Omer, and going in a slightly different method, before we count the seventh day, night of the Omer, which seventh thing in Judaism is the most important? I'm going to give you two options, and we can have a fierce debate very quickly, or a quick vote, but
Or tomorrow. Or tomorrow.
or tomorrow. Oh, well, we're just going to show up at the end, but seventh day of creation, Shabbos, right? Or today, seventh day of Pesach. Well, yesterday, because we're just out of it. Seventh day of Pesach, which our tradition holds, is when we escape. Right? That's when we do the Shirah, and we march through the sea as it parts, make it to the other side, and we watch Pharaoh and the army be swept away. So, seventh day of creation from which we get Shabbat, or seventh day of Pesach from which we get freedom and our relationship with God. Which one's more important? Shabbos? Ooh,
Pesach.
Pesach. I side with the cantor.
Of course. It's in your contract.
In this way, that Moshe, there's a midrash about Moshe, that when he was in Pharaoh's house, he observed the torments and the physical subjugation of the people in servitude, and went to Pharaoh and said, you know, adoptive father, Pharaoh, you know, the slaves would be much more productive if we gave them off one day a week. So Shabbat is something you can, from that midrash, is something you could deduce, you could come up with as a good thing, kind of on your own. Whereas escaping seventh day Pesach, we need the miracle. Yeah, absolutely. No, it's they're both good answers. It's the how many angels, the head of the pin kind of a thing. So, but they're both great answers, so. Anyway, we have the Omer. Ah,
Really? I got to go home.
yeah. I mean, the easy answer is the Avot and the Imahot, but it gets much more complicated now. We get past 7. Okay. Are we going to
הנני מוכן ומזומן, הנני מוכן ומזומן, הנני מוכן ומזומן לקיים מצוות עשה עשה כספירת העומר, כמו שכתוב בתורה. הנני מוכן ומזומן, כמו שכתוב בתורה. הנני מוכן ומזומן, ושפת אליכם נוכרת השבת, מיום הביוכם את עומר התנופה, 7 שבתות מיד תהיינה, עד ממחרת השבת השביעית, תספרו 50 יום. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו תודה וציוונו על ספירת העומר, היום 7 ימים שהם שבוע אחד לעומר. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל לתת גדולה, ליוצר בראשית שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נדע שמיים וסודר את בושה וראש שמיים משה זוג ומרמים, הוא אלוהינו ונוד הגנה גם לך ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. יגדל אלוהים חי וישתבח, נמצא וינד אל מציאותו, אחד ואין יחיד כייחודו, נעלם וגם אסוף לאחדותו, אין לו דמות הגוף ויהן הגוף לא נערוך אליו קדושתו, כרמול לכל דבר אשר נברא, ראשון וראשית לראשיתו, הינו אדון עולם וכל נוצר יורה גדולתו ומלכותו, שפע נבואתו נתנו אל אנשי סגולתו ותפארתו, לא קם בישראל כמו שיורה נביא ומביט את אמונתו, תורת מת נתן לימואל, על יד נביאו נאמן ביתו, לא יחליפה אלף ולא ימידתו לעולמים לזולתו, צופה ויודע סתרנו, מביט לסוף דבר בקדמתו, קומא לאיש חסד כמפעלו, נותן לרשע רע כרשעתו, ישלח לקץ הימין משיחנו, לפדות מחכה קץ ישועתו, מתים יחייל ברוב חסדו, ברוך הדייר שם תהילתו, מתים יחייל ברוב חסדו, ברוך הדייר שם תהילתו.
חג שמח. Exactly.
Interesting teachings.
Coming together tomorrow to celebrate the day that none of us actually think is Pesach.
חג שמח.